The room had been locked for as long as anyone could remember. No one had a key. No one knew what was inside. My uncle boarded it up years ago and never spoke about it again. When he died, I inherited the house, and for the first few weeks I didn't touch that end of the hallway. Then one morning, I noticed something strange. The door wasn't locked anymore. I'm a contractor, or at least I was. These days I mostly do clean-outs and light reno work. Paint, fixtures, flooring. I'd just wrapped a long job and figured I could save a chunk of money by doing the work on my uncle's place myself. It was in a quiet neighborhood just outside of town. The house had good bones. I moved in temporarily to work on it full-time and save on rent. I was staying there alone for the most part. My dog Murphy was still at my parents' place. I figured he'd just get in the way while I was working. Besides, the house didn't really feel like home yet. I hadn't even tried to open that back room. I just worked around it, scraping wallpaper, patching drywall, hauling junk to the dump. The door was there at the end of the upstairs hallway. Ordinary, except that it didn't budge. I figured maybe it was nailed shut from the inside. It creeped me out a little, sure, but not enough to make it a priority. I thought I'd break it open eventually when I started on that end of the house. Until then, I just kept walking past it. Then, about 3 weeks in, I was coming up the stairs one morning with my coffee when I stopped cold. The hallway looked off. The door, that door, was open. Just a few inches, but enough to see the dark gap inside. I set the coffee down and just stared at it for a long time. I hadn't touched it. No one else had a key. I finally reached forward and nudged the edge open with my boot. The hinges didn't creak. Inside was darkness. The room didn't look finished. No paint, no trim, just rough concrete floors and open studs on the walls. I turned on my phone flashlight and stepped just inside. The air smelled stale, but not like mold or rot. More like something sealed too long. Like something had been trapped in there. I asked my dad about it later that night. He just said, "Your uncle was a private guy," and changed the subject. But it didn't sit right. Why leave one room completely sealed off for decades? Why not use it for storage or turn it into something useful? And why had no one ever been allowed in? The door hadn't just broken open. There was no sign of damage. No signs it had ever been stuck. I started to wonder if the lock had been on the inside. That was the night I heard footsteps upstairs. Just 2 or 3, in the middle of the night. I was downstairs watching TV and had paused it to grab water when I heard it. Slow, deliberate creaking across the floor above me. I froze. Then silence. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding my breath. The house had been empty for weeks. The footsteps didn't repeat. It happened again the next night, always around 2:30 or 3 a.m. Not loud, not constant. Just a few steps, then silence. I left the hallway light on and kept my phone nearby. I told myself it had to be the boards settling from the temperature change. But there was something deliberate about the rhythm, like someone was waiting to hear if I would come up and check. By the 4th night, I moved my air mattress upstairs. Not because I wanted to, but because I felt like I needed to see it. I left the door to that room cracked open, same as I'd found it. I lay there, watching the hallway from across the landing. At 2:43 a.m., I heard a soft tap. Just one. Like a knuckle brushing the inside of the far wall. Then nothing. I got up with the flashlight and stepped toward the open door. The smell hit me stronger now. Not rot, exactly. Something sour. The flashlight flickered, which didn't help. I leaned into the doorway, scanning the bare concrete. That's when I saw it. A faint ring of black ash, maybe 2 feet wide, drawn into the floor. It wasn't there before. Something had added it. The next morning, I walked the whole perimeter of the house, No signs of forced entry. No footprints in the frost on the back deck. I went back up and opened the room again. The ash circle was still there, but now it was smudged, like someone had dragged a hand or foot across the edge. I couldn't take it anymore. I called my dad and demanded real answers. That's when he told me. Toward the end, my uncle wasn't right. He wouldn't let repair people in. Slept on the couch, boarded over that room himself. He kept saying it didn't belong to the house, like it had been added wrong, like it led somewhere it shouldn't. Dad never believed it. But he said once, years ago, he'd opened that door when my uncle wasn't home. Just once. Said it made him feel like he was being watched from behind the walls. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' place and picked up Murphy. I didn't want to sleep another night in that house alone. That night, I locked the door again, used a deadbolt from the garage and wedged a chair under the knob. I stuffed towels in the frame and taped over the gap. I didn't sleep upstairs. I stayed on the couch with the lights on and Murphy curled up at my side. Still, I woke up at 2:34 a.m. Heart racing, ears straining. No footsteps. Just that sense. Like something had shifted. Like the silence was too complete. When I went upstairs at dawn, everything was still in place. Lock, chair, tape. But something was different. I peeled back the tape and pulled the towel from the gap. The smell hit me first. Then I saw the floor. There were footprints inside the room. Bare feet, angled toward the door. They hadn't been there yesterday. Just prints in the dust. Facing out. Like something had been standing there all night. Waiting. We moved into the house on a Friday. By Monday, we were both sleeping with the lights on. There was nothing wrong with the house, not on paper, but it felt like someone else still lived there. Not in the walls, in the routines, the lights, the mirrors, like the house hadn't noticed we'd moved in. I noticed it first. Little things, like the front door sticking more than it should, or the hall light clicking off by itself. But I've worked maintenance before, so I didn't jump to conclusions. We were still unpacking, still adjusting. My wife, Janelle, was more focused on getting the kitchen organized, and our daughter, Maddie, settled. The house had a good layout, solid foundation, no major issues in the inspection, but something about it felt preoccupied, like it was still full in a way that didn't show on paper. The previous owner had passed away. The place had sat empty for nearly a year. The agent said he'd lived here alone for decades, passed quietly upstairs. No red flags. Maddie liked the front bedroom with the big windows, so we gave it to her. I repainted the walls and swapped the ceiling fan myself. No weird stains, no crawlspace oddities. Still, there were moments when I'd stop and feel like I'd stepped into someone else's rhythm, like I was in a space that hadn't fully let go of its last routine. The first real moment came about 2 weeks in. I came downstairs around midnight to grab a charger and noticed the living room lamp was on. I was sure I'd turned it off. But what made me pause was the smell, like someone had just smoked a cigarette. Faint, but fresh. We don't smoke. I walked the perimeter, checked the windows, even looked for a short in the wiring. Nothing. I unplugged the lamp. Didn't think much of it until the next night, when the back porch light turned on by itself. Motion sensor. But the yard was empty. Janelle started getting uneasy not long after. She said the energy felt off, especially upstairs. Like I'm being watched when I brush my teeth, she said. Maddie, she's 6, started refusing to go into the hallway alone. I didn't like that. Kids are sensitive, but she couldn't explain it. She just said, I don't like the man who used to live here. We'd never mentioned the previous owner to her. That stopped me cold. I installed cameras that weekend, one over the porch one in the living room, one in the upstairs hallway. I told myself it was for peace of mind, but the truth was, I'd started hearing things. Light footsteps, whispers, a door closing softly down the hall when I was the only one awake. Janelle said she'd seen movement in the hallway mirror, someone passing behind her when no one else was home. I told her she was just tired, but I was seeing it too, and neither of us wanted to admit it. That same night, around 3 a.m., I woke up freezing. The heater was running, but our room felt like a basement. I got up to check the thermostat. As I stepped into the hallway, I noticed the light under Maddie's door was on, brighter than usual. I started toward it. That's when I heard it. A man's voice, low and steady, like someone reading. Just a few words, slow and careful. I couldn't make them out. The second I touched the doorknob, the light went out. She was asleep, tucked in. Nothing in her room but a few stuffed animals and a nightlight. I checked every inch. No one under the bed, no one in the closet. Nothing on the camera feed either. Just static during that exact window of time. When I showed Janelle the clip the next morning, she just nodded like she already knew. We didn't talk about it after that. But that night, we moved Maddie's mattress into our room. We didn't want her sleeping alone. 2 days later, I came home from work and found Janelle sitting on the floor of the hallway, staring at the attic hatch. It was one of those square panels you push up to open. We'd never used it. She looked pale. I asked what happened. She said she'd heard footsteps above her while folding laundry. Not rats, not scurrying. Heavy footsteps, like boots. Then she pointed to the wall behind her. Scratched into the paint, faint but deliberate, were 2 words. Stay downstairs. I climbed up with a flashlight and checked the attic. It was mostly empty, just insulation, old ductwork, no floorboards. But in the far corner, nestled between the rafters, was a blanket. Not dusty, not old, folded. On top of it was a cigarette butt, fresh enough it still smelled. There were no footprints, no way in or out except the hallway. I didn't tell Janelle what I found. I just came down and told her to pack a bag. That night we stayed at her sister's place. I went back in the morning by myself to check the cameras and change the locks. But before I made it upstairs, I noticed something new. The hallway mirror, the one outside Maddie's room, had writing on the glass. It wasn't there the day before. Drawn in condensation, "Let me back in." The house had no central AC, no reason for moisture, and it was inside the glass, not on the surface. We never went back to live there. We paid the mortgage for 2 more months while we found a renter. I never told them anything, just that it was an older place with character. Sometimes I wonder if he's still in the walls, waiting for the next family to leave a light on. But I keep coming back to something Maddie said a few days before we moved out. She looked at the window one night and whispered, "He's not the man who used to live here." The first time I heard the front doorknob rattle, it was 2:17 in the morning. Just a soft metallic twitch, like someone testing it. Slow, careful, not a knock. I live alone, and I keep that door locked. I remember sitting up and listening for footsteps, but nothing followed. No car, no voice, just silence. I checked the porch camera the next day. The light had flicked on at 2:17 a.m. exactly, the same time I heard someone try the doorknob. I'm Mark. I moved here about a year ago after a rough stretch. Divorce, job change, downsizing. This house was the first thing I've had that really felt like mine. Not big, not fancy, just a place where I could reset. I started keeping odd hours once I went remote, working late, taking calls from clients overseas. So I was used to being up past midnight. But that week, something felt different. I started noticing I'd get a little uneasy the closer it got to 2 in the morning. Like I was bracing for something, even before it happened. The front porch had a sensor light. I'd see it flicker on sometimes, even when no cars went by. I figured it was bugs, or maybe a stray cat. But I started checking the camera more often, and that's when I noticed the timing. 2:17 a.m. every night, within a few seconds. The light would come on, then the camera would glitch, just for a moment. 1 or 2 frames dropped, and then everything would look normal again. I finally stayed up and waited. I turned all the lights off and stood at the top of the stairs, just barely peeking at the front door. Right on schedule, I heard it. Click, rattle, then stillness. The porch light came on, but no movement, no shape, just empty steps. I watched the doorknob for a long time. It didn't turn again, but I swear it had moved, like someone had tested it, gently, carefully, and then stopped once they knew I was listening. I told myself, maybe it was a neighbor with the wrong house, or a glitch in the lock. I even replaced the handle that weekend. New deadbolt, new hardware. Double-checked the frame. The next night, nothing happened. For one night. Then at 2:17, it came back. Not a knock, not a bang, just that light pressure. The quiet confirmation that yes, I was still here. I started sleeping upstairs again, door locked, with a heavy wrench beside the bed. The worst part was not knowing what they wanted. They never tried to force it, never knocked, never said a word. Just came back, night after night. I didn't call the police. What would I say? That someone might be touching my doorknob at the same time every night? They'd tell me to get motion lights. I already had them. A week later, it escalated. I was in bed, dozing off, when I heard it again. Only this time, it came from the back door. I sat straight up. That door led into the kitchen. There was no porch, no cover. No one should be back there. I crept downstairs barefoot, heart racing, and peeked around the corner. The back porch light was on. The knob was still, but there were wet footprints on the concrete pad, bare feet, facing the door. I checked the front camera. No glitch that time, just static. The back camera feed didn't record anything at all, like it had been shut off. I backed up the footage, tried to reload it. Nothing. It skipped from 2:16 to 2:20, 4 minutes gone. I sat on the kitchen floor for almost an hour after that, trying to convince myself it wasn't targeted, that it couldn't be. But every night after that, it kept happening. First the front door, then the back, then the basement hatch. I don't even use the basement. It's unfinished, and I keep it locked from the inside. But one night I found it unlocked. I know I didn't leave it that way. I started carrying the wrench room to room, checking every lock twice. The doorknob never turned. It didn't have to. The sound alone was enough to keep me up. That Friday, I got a call from a neighbor I barely knew, old guy named Ray, 2 doors down. He said he saw someone on my porch the night before. Thought maybe it was you just standing there. But then I realized, too tall. I asked what he meant. He paused, then said, "They didn't move right. Just stood there facing the door, like they didn't know what to do next." Ray said he almost came over but got spooked and went back inside. That's when I stopped waiting. I packed a bag and left that night. Stayed at a hotel an hour away. I didn't tell anyone why. Didn't go back until Sunday afternoon. I wanted to pretend I was imagining it. But when I pulled into the driveway, there was a note wedged into the doorframe. No envelope. Just a folded piece of printer paper with 4 words written in pen. "You weren't home tonight." I moved out a month later. Rented the place to a couple who seemed nice enough. I didn't mention anything. Didn't want to scare them off. I still check the doorbell camera from time to time. Most nights, nothing. But every once in a while, at 2:17 a.m. sharp, the camera glitches for exactly 2 frames. And when it comes back, the porch light is on. And just barely. In the corner of the frame, I can see the faint outline of damp footprints on the concrete, pointed straight at the door.